Welcome to the Gen AI Daily Briefing for Monday, August 17th, 2026. The most consequential market move in the last couple of days is the report that Stripe will acquire OpenRouter for more than $7 billion. If that number holds, it's a big statement about where value is consolidating in the AI stack. OpenRouter has effectively been building model access aggregation as infrastructure, routing across providers, normalizing APIs, arbitraging price and latency, and giving developers a single control plane above the model layer. Put that inside Stripe, and the obvious thesis is that AI usage is becoming a metered economic flow, not just a software feature. Stripe already understands billing primitives, fraud, risk, global compliance, and developer workflows. So this is less about owning one model and more about owning the transactional fabric around many models. The broader implication is that the gateway layer is no longer a thin wrapper. It's becoming where policy, spend management, model selection, and eventually agent commerce get enforced. Next up, Anthropic gave more detail on how Claude's new invisible text watermarking works, and the technical nuance matters. The company says it's using a version of SynthID-style, originally developed by Google DeepMind. The basic idea is not hidden metadata, but probabilistic word choice biasing that leaves a detectable statistical signature in generated text. For engineering leaders, the key point is that this is not robust like a cryptographic signature. It's a detector over distributions, so light edits may preserve some signal, heavier rewrites can wash it out, and code is a particularly awkward domain because the output space is more constrained and formatting changes can destroy detectability fast. Still, this is probably good enough for parts of the EU transparency regime, where the requirement is often provenance, signaling rather than adversarially robust authentication. The interesting architecture question is whether watermarking becomes a default serving layer primitive across providers, or whether enterprises instead lean toward document lineage, signing, and workflow-level audit trails because they're easier to reason about legally. On the governance side, there's a report that OpenAI disbanded its preparedness team and redistributed the work elsewhere in the org. The important issue here is not org chart drama. It's whether frontier model risk assessment remains independent enough to create friction when friction is actually needed. As the industry moves from chatbots to tool-using, long-horizon agents, preparedness can't just be a policy memo. It has to be wired into evals, release gates, red teaming, sandboxing, and post-deployment monitoring. If those responsibilities diffuse into product and research teams without a strong counterweight, the risk is predictable. Safety work becomes advisory instead of operational. This lands at an awkward moment because autonomous agent stories have moved from theoretical to empirically annoying. We're no longer debating whether models can take unintended actions. We're debating how often and under what guardrails. Related to that shift from chat to ambient software, OpenAI's macOS app now reportedly includes computer history, which tracks clicks and keystrokes to build a timeline ChatGPT and Codex can reference later. Strategically, this is one of the clearest signs that the next contest is over persistent context, not just benchmark IQ. If a model can observe your work across apps, infer recurring patterns, and resume interrupted tasks, it starts to look less like a question-answering system and more like a personalized execution environment. Technically, the hard part won't be capture. It will be summarization, retrieval, permissioning, and deciding what should be stored as explicit memory versus what should remain ephemeral. Enterprises should read this as a warning shot. The desktop and browser are becoming training and inference surfaces. That raises obvious privacy and compliance questions, but also a product one. Whoever owns the event stream owns a huge chunk of automation value. Worth flagging on the talent and ecosystem side, SpaceX has officially closed its acquisition of Cursor. That's a fascinating fit. Cursor was already one of the strongest products in AI-assisted coding, but inside SpaceX, the value proposition changes from developer productivity to vertically integrated engineering throughput. In other words, coding copilots are no longer just SaaS. For advanced industrial companies, they're part of the core toolchain alongside simulation, CI, hardware test systems, and manufacturing software. Expect more of this. Frontier code generation teams getting pulled into companies where software is downstream of a much larger physical system. The message to the market is that the best coding agent capabilities may increasingly disappear behind corporate walls rather than remain broadly available as standalone tools. Now to the research side. A strong paper called Marionette proposes a cleaner decomposition for world models in interactive environments. Instead of auto-regressing pixels or latent frames and hoping the model implicitly tracks pose, geometry, and occlusion, Marionette explicitly predicts world state, uses a fixed zero-parameter renderer for geometry, and leaves the neural network to generate appearance. That separation is conceptually elegant and practically useful. It means some parts of the environment are handled by exact computation rather than learned approximation, which should reduce long-horizon drift. This matters far beyond games. It's the same design instinct showing up in robotics and agent simulation. Don't make the model learn physics, geometry, and photorealism all in one blurry latent soup if some of those pieces can be made symbolic or deterministic. Another paper, Twin, pushes a related idea from a different angle. It tackles unknown games by having the agent construct an executable world model at test time, then use that digital twin to validate actions and infer hidden rules. That's a notable step because it shifts capability from memorized pattern matching toward on-the-fly simulation building. Arc-style tasks have been a useful stress test for whether models can infer latent structure rather than regurgitate templates. Twin's framing suggests a future agent architecture where the language model is not the whole reasoner. Instead, it synthesizes a compact programmatic environment model, then reasons through interaction with that model. If you're building agents for enterprise operations, the analogy is obvious. The best systems may increasingly compile internal executable representations of a workflow, spreadsheet, or software environment before acting. And one more paper deserves attention because it's directly relevant to production hallucination control. You Only Pass once shows a way to get a frozen language model to both answer and abstain in a single forward pass. The approach combines reading the residual stream for evidence sufficiency with writing to it through a steering probe to improve reasoning. The subtle result is that these two operations interfere, so the authors explicitly manage the interaction. Why this matters? A lot of deployed systems still treat abstention as an afterthought, bolted on with a separate verifier or confidence threshold. This line of work suggests abstain versus answer can be integrated into the same inference pass, reducing cost and potentially improving calibration. For high-stakes workflows, that's more interesting than another point or two on a math benchmark. Stepping back, a pattern is emerging. On the business side, control points above the model layer are getting expensive fast, whether that's routing, billing, desktop context, or proprietary coding environments. On the technical side, the better research is moving away from end-to-end monoliths and toward structured systems. Separate the renderer from the predictor, the twin from the policy, the answer from the abstention logic. That's a healthy sign. It usually means the field is growing out of its just make the transformer bigger phase. What to watch next? Whether the reported Stripe OpenRouter deal triggers copycat, moves around model gateways and observability, whether watermarking survives contact with real enterprise editing pipelines, and whether more agent products start asking for always-on desktop visibility in exchange for automation. Also keep an eye on research that externalizes reasoning into executable artifacts. That looks increasingly like the route from impressive demos to reliable systems. That's your briefing. We'll see you tomorrow.